I wasn't lying when I said I wanted to take you up to Kansas and let you check out the property and give me some tips and pointers on it.
Well, let me get these legs healed and or I can stroll and we'll do it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So, proper introduction. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Dan Dewitt. Ain't nobody special.
AKA Cuzz.
AKA Cuzz. Everybody calls me Cuzz.
Yeah, well, you're famous now.
I don't know about all that.
You may have been a little bit famous before, but I'm telling you, you go through TikTok and you are a sensation that is on fire.
Well, light it up, baby. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and really quick, you've been on this before. Most people know you, but give me a little invitation of who you is.
Yeah. Michael McVay. I'm just an everyday guy, deer hunter, duck hunter, anything that moves. I like to hunt. I'm not very good at it, so I hope I can learn a few tips from Cuzz over here. But no, we've been rocking and rolling for about better part of a decade now. Just
pretty close,
chasing animals and living life and having a lot of fun doing it. So man, I'm glad to be here. Yeah,
I'm glad you are back. Like I said, when we kind of threw this together last minute, like I'm getting ready to go out of town to Kansas Saturday. So we're recording this. It's Wednesday, November 20th. So I'm leaving the 23rd Saturday, headed up to Kansas. You've already been up there. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and give me a little bit of a...
Yeah, I was up there 2 weeks ago now. So what was that? Sometime around November 5th, the week of November 5th. Pretty rough conditions. It was a little warm, unseasonably warm up there. Had a bad day in the middle of that week. It was pouring down rain, but I stuck it out 6 straight days in a tree, wind blowing like crazy. And it was tough conditions. Maybe seeing a deer or two a day. Yeah. It was tough. Long sits, but you're not gonna kill them if you're not in the tree, especially during the rut. So I gave it all I got, and I'll probably make another trip up there here in a couple weeks. If I get the wife's blessing, we'll see there. But now probably a little quick 3 or 4 day trip. Try to go back up there, see what we can do with it. But wasn't the best of trips, but that's okay. That's part of hunting, right?
The all day set, which we're coming to that time of the year, the rut. I highly recommend the all day set, but it's a mental game, and you got to win the mental game, and that's the game with yourself. And that's a tough game to win. I know a lot of guys, they'll go out there with those intentions of hunting all day and they burn out. And it can happen to any of us.
It's happened to me.
Oh, yeah.
Those all day sits, you get fired up, right there at the first day, and you're like, all right, I'm going to bring some more snacks tomorrow. I'm going to bring some dude wipes. I forgot those. There's a few things I'm going to bring that you do. But that second day and going in the third day, it can get rough. For me personally, it can. Those all day sits. If you're seeing a lot of good activity, it's good. It's like fishing. I love to catch fish, but I don't necessarily love to fish. I like to catch fish.
I don't like casting. I like catching.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't like looking. I like shooting.
So that's how those all day sits tend to be. Is it just can get a little bit much for me personally.
Now I'm going to ask you a question, and kind of going off a little bit where we were going to talk about, but when we started talking about doing this. Let's just talk about basics of hunting and what we learn in the basics, and what I do and what I've done that's helped me be successful. But like, I got a golden rule, and one of my golden rules of bow hunting or gun hunting is did you set the same stand all 6 days? I
did not. Actually, I hung a second set.
I'm being serious.
No, Nolan's laughing because I hung a second set because I wasn't seeing anything on my go-to set. It's the set I killed a deer a few years ago. I love this place. Wasn't seeing much, but I went scouting a little bit, saw a lot of activity somewhere else, went to that second set, and on the next day, I had my shooter buck come through real quick. He just passed by at my original set. So I missed out on that opportunity. But I played the wind, hunted the sign. It's an odds game, and I was playing the odds there. So, but I didn't win on that one.
Well, my philosophy is this: I hunt a stand 3 sets, either morning, evening, or evening, and then I'm out of there for a couple of days.
Okay.
Because think about this: those deer get used to you coming in and out. They pattern us as well as we pattern them, especially in small tracks, open field tracks, like where y'all hunting in Kansas. I hadn't seen your spot, but it's probably very narrow wood lots, more big openings and things like that. So your exposure to the deer seeing you or hear you come in and out is high. So I give them 3 shots and I'm out. Morning, evening, morning, evening, morning, evening. And then I move up. And I may not move but 200 yards, 150 yards, but I'm going to do something different. And unfortunately, sometimes your big buck does, the day you're not there, he is there. But there again, that's hunting. But as a general rule, if you follow that and you move around your property like that, even if you're mobile and you just reset up where you have never hunted before, I think it gives you an edge. I think it gives you a huge edge on hunting whitetail deer. I really do.
I like that because that second set I hunt, it was a mobile setup. It was saddle hunting, the mobile sticks, everything else, and I just happened to find a spot that I hadn't hunted before. Just a lot of sign coming through there. It was a place I could kind of see. I'm hunting an area where deer travel, and it's a big travel corridor. So I wanted to get a place that I could see and be able to glass a little bit more and things like that. And so when I moved, it was a mobile setup, and I just happened to hunt there. And I had a little bit of luck there. Don't get me wrong, but obviously that one day I chose wrong, and that's just part of the game. I was playing the wind. It was all I could do. So,
but really quick though, how was the wind on that set when the buck come through? Your shooter buck came through? Was your wind?
Terrible wind
to hunt. The wind was bad to hunt that spot.
It would have blown directly to him and where he came from. So I had to take that into account, right? And that's why I picked the other set. So there's nothing I could have done there. So I'm not going to beat myself up because I picked the wrong stand on that one.
And the thing too is, it all also depends on how much time you've had to scout in the summer, prepare. I mean, when you're like, if you go into an area and you've never hunted that area, you got to do the best you can do with what you're looking at and the wind and everything else. And that's why I like to try to be mobile. That's hard for me now because of my legs. But the thing is too, like we didn't have saddles to hunt out of. Y'all come in another generation with the latest and greatest technology and things like that are just phenomenal. I mean, I wish we'd had saddle back then. We had, when the first tree stands come out, the Baker and the Joe Amaker, we call them the suicide stands because they didn't even have tops. They were climbing stands. You hug the tree, you pull yourself up, and you get about halfway.
Real safe stuff.
Oh, sure. We didn't have none of that. But anyway, we all lived. I don't know how. But anyway, but just to be that mobile and to go into that area, you got to play the cards the best way you can. But if you have an area like you have up in Kansas, then you can go in, pre-scout, set up a lot of summertime scrapes, get movement, see what the deer are doing, set your trail cameras up where you can study the wind, study the moon phases of what those deer move at, and that way you let the cameras do your scouting for you.
Yeah.
And I mean, we got so many tools today that we didn't have 30, 40 years ago, 20 years ago. Saddles, cameras, cell cameras. Oh my God, what we learn from those is phenomenal. But we still got to, like you said, we got to be in the stand because it don't matter how smart you are, how much knowledge you have. If you're not in the stand, you're not shooting a deer.
Yeah. You mentioned cameras just then. I had a question to follow up with that. Do you pay much attention to your cameras during the rut?
100%.
Do you? Okay.
100%. Because during the rut, everything changes, as you know. I've got core scrapes, and right now I'm having to check everything off a golf cart. So I'm not really, I'm riding around on 100 acres. I can't get out in the forest and hunt like I want to. But my wife and I, just a few days ago, we took a ride. And between some of my major scrapes that I run year round, all of a sudden, bam, 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 bam. Here's 5 or 6 new scrapes on this ridge. Here's 5 or 6 new scrapes over here. So immediately I start bringing cameras in. Immediately I start spraying Rookham juice. And all of a sudden, bam, I find the hot scrape. I've got deer. Matter of fact, hopefully tomorrow will be my first time to get to hunt this year, hopefully. And I know exactly where I'm going based on what I'm watching on these cameras because I've got, and I ain't got no big shooters on this property this year. I've got like 120-inch 8-point that's got, 6-inch tines, nothing special, 125-inch deer. But he's an old mature deer.
Yeah.
And if he keeps doing what he's doing, matter of fact, on the way up here, he hit that scrape.
And that's a good point. You mentioned scrapes. Are you setting them up on scrapes, food, trails?
100% scrapes and trails.
Scrapes
100%.
and trails.
Okay. Number one, I don't hunt food to start with. I make food product for deer, but when I do hunt food areas, I'm hunting the trails coming into the food.
Got it.
I want to catch, because you know as well as I do, the bucks are going to stage. Even if he's coming to that food, he's still going to stage up. And I want to catch him when he's looking at that food 50, 75, 100 yards away, because I bow hunt, getting him looking at that, finding out the trail he's coming in on and the time and how much. Because if he's staging up 200 yards out, I want to be 200 yards out. Yeah. And you just back trail him with your cameras and let your cameras catch this information for you, and it'll tell you. But like me and my wife, and what's funny, I'm riding in there on a golf cart, right? Now, I will tell you this. I am spraying Seymour deer on my golf cart tires. Now, you can laugh if you want to. I don't care. It don't matter, because I got a picture of me with my crippled butt setting up a scrape. Well, he'd made a scrape. I had a scrape all summer. And then he come about 20 yards and made scrape on this old trail. So now he's got 3 fresh scrapes. He's working my scrape, but he's also working these 3 new ones that he made. So I set up a camera. I got 3 cameras set there. So I know which way he's coming from. I got him. If he comes in that area, I got him right now. Well, I've had 5 since I went in there and freshened up their scrapes, set a camera, put out all my scent. Now I've got 5 bucks that have hit that in the last 4 days. And then yesterday, about 11:30, I get an alarm on my phone, and here, boom, there's a doe runs by it. Right behind her in that 10-second video, there's a spike. A minute later, here comes an 8-point, 2-year-old. Right behind him, there's a 6-point. Right behind him, there's a 4-point. So it's fixing to take place in central Louisiana, folks. I'm telling you.
That's what I was going to ask you. Where is this located?
Area 2, central Louisiana, Grant Parish. It's that area down there is fixing to happen. I got some guys over in Vernon Parish, buddy of mine. They went out. Theirs is a little ahead of us. His wife killed a really nice 8-point this morning. He did the drag rag with the cooter juice. The buck come out, hit the trail, nearly walked to the box stand. They're hunting out of box stands, and the deer literally walked up to the box stand. So, but right now, if you're out there in the rut and you got scrapes that they have worked out, this time of the year, they make a lot of more scrapes. They just start, they might make a scrape, never come to it again. I've found scrapes, put a camera on them, you never get a deer back there, because they're getting that fired up chase mode. So when you find a trail that's got like 6 or 8 new scrapes in a 75, 100 yard period of time, get you some cameras on it, put you some scent on it, and see exactly, get them fired up. I guarantee you that right there, this right here, Rook'em Juice will fire them up. If they make a scrape and you hit it, now don't overdo it. If I'm making a scrape and they've never been to it, 5 on the limb, 5 in the dirt. If I find their scrape, 2 on the limb, 2 in the dirt. Just enough smell, just enough of that scent to let them know somebody else has been in their house.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. It's crazy. Now, I wish I'd have been hunting another morning, because my 20-inch buck, he walked by there at 9 o'clock and worked the scrape, worked the licking branch, did everything he's supposed to do. But take their scrapes over and you will fire them up, and just have extra cameras. I mean, I do. I got plenty of cameras, and I'll start moving cameras just to see the activity. And then boom, you start seeing does running. It's crazy. The does will run those trails that those scrapes is on. They may not stop. Now, I've had a couple of does stop and work the scrape, but man, when you see that doe run down that scrape, and then all of a sudden, boom, here comes all the young bucks, it's fixing to happen, because the young bucks chase them first, and then as we all know, then here comes the big deer, and when the big deer hit their feet, that's when we need to be in the tree.
Yeah, I listened. I think it was. Actually, I don't even remember who it was, but it was talking about a deer study that, I don't know if it's Mississippi or Georgia. I don't know. Someone did a study the other day, I saw it the other day. They did the study from a while back, but it was a majority, like 70+% of the does, from what I remember this cat saying is a YouTube video, 70+% of the does that are bred, they are bred by 2.5-year-old or younger deer. So again, essentially young deer, like immature deer. But if they have twins, this was pretty interesting. If they have twins, I knew this was the case with dogs, or I've heard this. If it's twins, it's going to be most of the time, upwards of 80+% of the deer that they studied like genetically, different dads, like different bucks for twins. Triplets, almost 100% of triplets, 3 different dads.
Really?
Yep. I mean, they had that. I saw that out of Mississippi. I was out of Mississippi.
Was it Mississippi? That's what it was?
The place out in Kerrville, Texas, the Whitetail Institute, has done a lot of study on that also. If you ever get a chance, go on their website. They got they got more history, I think, than any of the other deer places out there, the Whitetail Institute in Kerrville. But yeah, it's high numbers.
Yeah.
And if you really watch, it's the young bucks that chase the hardest.
Well, and that leads to my next thing. I've always been told and was taught and been under the impression that you may have like that shed. You're talking just like a big, mature 5-6-year-old deer, just no matter if he's a freaking spot, like 100-inch deer or 200-inch deer. If he's a mature, well, actually it does matter what I'm about to say. If you got a big horned, mature buck that just is the king of the forest, he's not traveling way far out like I've always thought. Like I've always thought that if you have a big buck, big horn, big mature buck, he's just the ringleader, so to speak. He's running all over the place. Like if you have him on your property, like us in Kansas, we don't have but 260 acres. So I'm thinking he may be 5 miles over there or 2 or 3 miles over here, just running back and forth, hitting all these different does. That's not the case. And I'm just now learning this.
Studies have shown that those giant deer like that go to a core area, stay there.
Their hometown, not hometown necessarily, but their main little stomping ground and breeding ground, or I guess really a breeding ground, they're not leaving outside of that. Whether it's a half mile, I don't know about the actual radius. It didn't say that, but I looked into it on multiple different things, and there's multiple people that are saying that those big bucks, they're not leaving running way off because they don't have to. Right. They're the ones that are the king of the woods or kings of the Midwest or whatever. So they're not having to go run way off. They can keep their does here, fight off all the other bucks because there's nobody that's going to take them over. Those young 2.5-year-old deer, they're not doing anything. So that was pretty interesting. I've never heard that.
And we've got to remember that's statistically, saying that on a statistical basis, on maybe even a controlled basis as well, you do have those outliers.
Sure.
Where they do travel miles away, or, the pressure's high, so it bumps them out of their area, or the doe population may be real low, so they go out searching. We do have some outliers there. So we're not saying that that's the only case ever.
Yeah.
But more than likely that is the case.
Yeah. Well, and you do the same with ducks too. Like there's a lot of probably studies that you're seeing on ducks and waterfowl that the studies show this, but there's still your outliers.
Oh yeah, there's always outliers. Statistical basis, statistical biases, models, everything else. It's like when I look at a study of any sort, I had this toxic trait of like poking holes and like, oh well, there's biases there, there's here, and that's okay, but it's a study.
Yeah,
it's a study, and typically in a controlled environment that you're not accounting for weather and all these other environmental factors that may be going on, individual behaviors of that certain animal. There's all kinds of stuff that can go on. So when we're doing studies, it's just taking a sample of what we're seeing and making inferences off the observations that are going on at that moment.
Yeah.
And that's the best we can do.
Yeah.
Well, and it all goes back to this. Take all these studies, all this data, and it's no good unless you're in the stand. And then you just got to play for the best. I mean, yeah, we can predict, early season, bow season, if you've done a lot of pre-scouting with cameras and even being on the ground and really getting out there and put the footwork in, which I think you need to do no matter how many cameras you got out there, you can get more predictable in that time of the year. But when you're getting rut, just on the backside of post-rut, it's all subject to change because you've got to find that big buck core and get in it. And then you may shoot another big buck who's trying to come into that core because he knows it's there. And there's so many. And then there again, there's this thing called luck. I've never had it, but I know some guys there's a guy last year that went out there and behind an old gravel pit and sat in a lounge chair and shot a booner.
This guy across the table from you, I mean, he sits on horseshoes.
Yeah,
that boy is
hand grenades.
Yeah.
Just share one of them with me. I need one of those.
You're lucky to be here. No, I'm joking. I'm lucky to be here. One of the things that that you said earlier, again, I want to talk about the basics of all deer hunting stuff, but mainly scrapes, moon, that kind of stuff. That's kind of what I want to hit on. That's what I would like to learn more about that I don't claim to know much. But you're talking about that big deer, and I've seen this multiple times, and me and Michael have already even talked about this. We talked about it the day it happened and I know at least 1 or 2 times since. But it was a wrong wind for you to hunt that set, but that's when that buck came through. You got a daylight picture of him roaming through. He wasn't stopping or anything. He was just walking that trail. And you got a little bit of feed out, but it was just walking that trail. But it
But what's that tell you? Think about this. Let's say, what wind, let me ask you this. What wind and where's your stand in relationship to the wind that he came through on? So the north wind and you're on the west side, or was
it was a southwest wind, and he came in from the northeast and came through headed south.
So if your stand was on the northwest side, it would have been perfect.
Correct.
So,
North, yes.
So what's that tell you?
Didn't move your stand?
No, have 2 setups.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that particular spot is...
That particular spot's a little difficult. It's a small, narrow pinch point. I can't quite move like I would like to, but that would make sense what you're talking about. I couldn't quite make that work.
I mean, if you can, and you got this great scenario, and you got this wind or that wind, if you can have 2 different opposing stands, even though they're or even bow range of each other, it can help.
And after scouting, if I could go, maybe 100 yards north, there's a large crossing. It's essentially a river crossing. We say river. It's about the size. It's about the size of this room.
Yeah.
But there's a crossing right there, heavily used. And if I should have moved and set up a little bit closer to that crossing, and I could see when they come across if they head north or head towards where my existing setup is. So I may even do that when I go back up there.
But that's what I was going to say is with that wind like that is the wrong wind for that set, but that's when you got that buck to daylight. That's happened multiple times to me, that it's a terrible wind for me to hunt, but it's a great wind for that deer to move through there. And
once he's taught you that, now it's a game of chess or checkers or whatever. Now it's your move. And when that wind hits again, you know where to be.
Yeah.
Even if you had a ground blind set up or whatever, because I know they're here in the South, ground blinds are like burglar alarms to going off to a deer. I don't know why. You can put one in the thicket, and it's like all of a sudden all the deer leave the thicket. But you go out west or in the Midwest, and they just, oh, hey, how y'all doing? You know, they just seem oblivious to them. I mean, I've literally gone out and set in Kansas and Missouri, set up pop-up blinds, and literally had deer walk within bow range that afternoon or that morning.
That's not happening most times here where we hunt. I think you can give that credit to probably all the hunters. I think it's probably a big part, but also there's the pressure, which goes back into hunters. But there's just so much pressure, so many people shooting
everything that walks,
busting deer.
But here again, it's there. I was in a discussion on Facebook this morning. You know, these people, well, you shouldn't shoot this and you shouldn't shoot that. Well, my answer to that is this, simply. If you buy my license, provide my weapon, provide me this place to hunt, pay all the expenses, then I'll do what you tell me to do.
Yeah.
You know, and we shouldn't tell other people what to hunt or shoot. Should we have guidelines? Absolutely. I think we all ought to shoot bigger deer, blah, 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 blah. But if a guy is happy with a spike, bust him.
Yeah.
Because it's his license, it's his opportunity, and it's his.
Yeah. And I do think in most, I'm the biggest advocate for that. For most situations, if us 3 go in and we're on a lease, or we go in out of state and spend a lot of money on a property, and we have this deer, we're like, hey, look, this is a 3 or even 4.5-year-old deer. He's 150s, 160s, or whatever now, but I think we ought to vote to put this deer on the pass list. I think that, but for most 99% of the situations that our listeners and even us are going to come in contact with, if it makes somebody happy, don't bash them.
Yeah, I mean, encourage it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but I want to go to really quick. Let's kind of get on into the basics of scrapes. We've already talked about the rookum juice and some different things like that.
The basics of scrapes are this. Deer have taught us that they invented social media. That's what a scrape is. It's where deer come, leave their scents, mark the branches, leave their scent in the ground with their interdigital, their forehead gland, their salivatory gland, all the glands. They leave their scent there. They come year round. Typically, they don't dig into them until pre-rut, rut. you know, but I keep them cleaned out year round, and I keep deer coming year round because absolutely they will. People are just now finding that out.
So why is that? Why don't they go and hoof them out and scrape them, like actually scrape them out and throw dirt out of them?
I think it's more of a dominance thing by the bucks. And I've seen does. The first time I witnessed a doe making a scrape, me and Preston Pittman was hunting. God, where were we hunting? It's been decades ago. Oh, it was in northern Arkansas on a muzzleloader hunt. And we're sitting in the stand, and I'm running the camera, and he's got his muzzleloader, and all of a sudden here comes this doe down the trail, and she goes over there, and I'm filming, and she just starts working the licking branch, and I'm looking at Preston and looking at me, you know, and we're like, check this out, it's pretty cool. And all of a sudden, man, she's just, you know, she's digging. And I'm like, man, she's throwing leaves this way and throwing leaves that way, and it was really great to get to see that because that was long enough ago that I really didn't, man, I'm talking about probably 30 years ago when we had them 35-pound cameras was toting back then. Now y'all got them, 2-ounce cameras. But anyway, to see actually a doe make a scrape was phenomenal because nobody had ever heard of that or even thought about it. And now, since the intervention of trail cameras and everything, we know that 85% of them are made by young bucks and does. And the big bucks only come in and either make them right at the last minute or, you know, but they still go work scrapes year round. Especially if you find one, I call one of those big community scrapes. I've got a scrape I can show you. I've got decades of pictures. You know, ever since trail cameras come out, I've got deer working this one holly bush, and they come year after year after year. And it's awesome. But that's how deer communicate. And I think if you go out and you keep your scrapes hot year round, and I'm not talking about going every day, every other day, every 3 or 4 days. During the off months, I probably hit a scrape once every 15, about twice a month, I'll freshen it. And if I'm getting a lot of activity, what you'll really find is the only time, and I got guys all over the country doing this with me, the time that we find the least amount of activity at a scrape, guess when that would be?
Post rut?
No.
Oh, I'd figure a lot. You're talking about throughout the year?
Yeah, 365. What time of the year would you think you get the less activity?
I think like springtime.
As soon as they drop their antlers.
Okay.
All the testosterone drops?
As soon as they drop those antlers. And I have found the best find. That wasn't the biggest sheds I ever found, but I found both sets laid in a scrape. I wish I'd have had a camera on that.
That'd been awesome.
That'd been cool.
I'm just walking through the woods because I love scouting that time of the year and finding scrapes left over, you know, to get new areas to hunt and things like that. And I walked up and I'm like, check this out. Man, it was a big old beach limb and they tore it up and it was still, you know, like 3-foot circle that was clean and there's a set of fresh sheds in it. But through the years, a lot of cameras running and talking to a lot of guys that do it like I do it, basically that 2 to 3 weeks right after they shed their antlers is what, for whatever reason, I don't know scientifically, but that's when we get the least amount of pictures. And then the 4th of July, we get a lot of pictures nationwide. Probably the best picture we got this year was a friend of mine in Iowa. He got 3 giants at a scrape on the 4th of July.
Were they together?
All 3 were together.
That's pretty cool.
I'll show it to you. It's like, well, we had like this 180 class there, and then these other 2 show up. It was just pretty neat to look at those kind. I mean, they're in velvet, they're giants. Well, this kid killed a 190, a little over 190 last year, about 200 yards from that place. He passed a 160 this year. He was in the tree that the scrape's in, and he's filming down on that deer, watching that deer work. And they just don't shoot 160s up there anymore because they've got bigger deer, and they know it. And they just I mean, it's still hard to imagine letting one, but he's sitting there videoing the deer with his phone, and he's directly under him. So it's pretty cool. But no, back to the scrapes. And here's something else too. I talk to people all the time. Well, I went and made a scrape, nothing ever got in it. That's right. That happens. You know, I make scrapes all the time. I put a camera on, never get a picture. But the thing is, you got to, just because it looks good to me or you, don't mean it looks good to a deer. You got to find, that's why when I hit an area, and I call it the trifecta or the triangle, I go in and I set up like topo maps. We talked about that last time. I am the topo gap. I wish everybody had to put OnX up and had to really learn how to read a compass and a topo map. Then you could really do some good. But you got ridge points, you got saddles. I go to those places first to look for sign, because that's traditionally you're on the side of a ridge, off a saddle. That's traditionally where bucks are going to make big scrapes. And it don't matter if it's flat ground like over here east of us right now. There's still contours. There's still things in the ground that give deer that transition. Transition in woods, transition in fields, transition in ditches. They love transitions. Look for those things. And in the areas you're in, when you start finding common denominators, that's where you start putting those scrapes and put them in a triangle. Let the deer dictate to you where they want to be. And then once you figure out where they want to be, then concentrate on where they want to be. And that's how I do a lot. I mean, a lot of times I'll go in and set up 3, and 1 or 2 of them will never get hit. But then there's that one that becomes your focus point. And, it's like anything. The more you go do something, the more success you have. And then you start learning. I mean, I said last time I went to that really nice place down in Jonesville, Louisiana. We set up 5, and 52 minutes after setting up the 3rd camera, we had a buck and a doe in it in September at a scrape that never existed that we just made. And within 24 hours, we had bucks in all 5 scrapes that we made. They've got an incredibly nice place to hunt, obviously. But there again, it was all based on what I looked at on a topo map and said, okay, let's try these spots. And the more you look at those spots, like, you sent me a picture of your place in Kansas, and I said, man, I'd like to do this. And you're like, well, man, there's a big deer there already. I said, well, I didn't know that, but that's just, it's just trial and error, and you learn what to do and what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned a little bit about making scrapes and finding scrapes. Could you touch on a little bit of where's the best place to look for scrapes, and then follow that up with what do you look for when you make a scrape?
Topo. It's all about topographical area. I mean, I wish we had a screen here I could show people, but contour, like when you're walking through, like, let's take North Louisiana for an example. Okay. We're in the piney woods. You have old clear cuts. You have new clear cuts. You got transitions between this kind of timber or that kind of timber. And then you got ridge points and things like that. That's where I start looking for that sign to pick up a spot. And look for trails. Look for, the most used trails I stay away from. The secondary trails, I get right off. And I never, ever, I learned the hard way, put a scrape on a trail. Deer avoid it. Deer, have you ever really seen a deer trail that had a scrape in the middle of it?
Not that I can think of.
They always get off to the side. So if you set your scrape off to the side, that'll tell you real quick whether they get involved with you or not.
We're talking like just off to the side.
10 yards, 5 yards, right. Whatever. But I've had guys, oh man, I made one right in the trail. I said, well, if you listen to my videos that I put out there, off the side of the trail. And if I got 2 or 3 trails coming into an area, I'll get off of where that intersection is and make a scrape. Don't put it in the middle of a trail, because it's just, to me, I don't think it's natural to them. And just, I hope I'm trying to answer your question.
Yeah.
But like out in Kansas, and does his place look like your place in Kansas?
It's pretty similar. Yeah. It's
rolling hills.
Yeah. In the rolling hills, they're pretty slight. Like that's another thing that makes Kansas, it makes me rely on food plots a lot more than what I would like.
Sure.
Just because there's so little of contour up there. Like you do have some slight rolling hills and there are some canyons and stuff around, but not necessarily on our property. It's just south of us. But the lack of contour changes, like elevation changes and everything that we can go and look here, like it's easy for us to go pull up a top of map of Darbone or Overflow or Upper Washita or whatever. And
well, let's compare it to over near the river though. There's no contour over there. It's just...
Well, the thing, it may not be so much contour over there, though, or over there, but what you do have, though, you do have thickets and you do have timber changes. You do have all of that. You have waterways that are dictating some, even if it's just little small, like not even flume ditch, it's just small little creeks and stuff running through properties off the river. You do have that. Whereas like we are in Kansas, it's like you have pretty much either ag, CRP grass, just tall, like plum thickety CRP grass kind of stuff, couple shelter belts, and then real small tree lines.
Right.
And it's like when, I don't know about you, but most every big deer that I've seen, like if we've been up there bird hunting or just scouting in general or even hunting, those really big deer, I'm seeing them off like in the middle of something. Like this, there's no way that they're walking a deer trail, and they likely are. But it's so big and vast in some of that plum thicket CRP stuff. Like it's going to be incredibly hard to hunt.
But in that plum thicket, and this is what I'd look for. There's a opening in that plum thicket somewhere, or multiple openings. And when you find that opening, whether it's the size of this room or half the size of this room, that's where you can develop a great scrape opportunities.
So what do you do? So again, a lot of plum thickets are going to be, some of them are head high, but a lot of the ones you see, I won't say on average are chest high, maybe a little bit shorter. So going out there, I've never seen a scrape, which not saying they're not there. I've never seen a scrape like in around a plum thicket like that.
I'd love to get out there and just look.
I'm gonna actually be looking for them moving forward. Mm-hmm. But you go out there and just make a scrape around a plum thicket.
Sure, find me an overhanging limb and see if they'll join me. And if they don't, just keep moving around till I find what they're really looking for. I'll tell you something else that works out in Kansas and in Nebraska and South Dakota and those areas. I know guys that's taking. I got some pictures I could show you. They're taking cedar post from the south. About a 6-inch cedar post. They take a post hole digger and they'll they'll leave the bark on it, cut all the limbs off, and they'll have it about 4 or 5 foot out of the ground, and those freaking bucks out there will rub them down to nothing.
How many of those do I have on my property?
Yeah.
That deer I killed last year in Kansas, he came in, it was a very brief hooking, but he came right through the food plot, pushed off 2 does, pushed off 1 doe, started to push off another, his horns barely touched it, and he got smoked. But I have 4 or 5
spray
of those
that down
up there.
with Rookham. But that's what my guy in South Dakota, he's killed 2 giants. He killed a 167-inch 8-point this year, and we got pictures of him on the post. He killed a 190-something last year. We got pictures of him on the scrape and on the post.
So have you ever put Rookham juice? Traditionally, I know it's going to be for scrapes. Have you ever put it on like a deer rub, like a deer hooking on a tree?
Absolutely.
Really? Because I know it's a lot of the same. The glands are right there.
Absolutely.
I get that, but I didn't know if they left some of their scent on that or if it's just a
because
visual.
he's rubbing his forehead on it. Have you ever killed a buck that had bark up on his antlers?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you've ever shot one in November, you have.
That big deer you killed in Kansas a couple of years ago, if I remember correctly, he was loaded.
He had shavings at every little indention at his bases.
Like packed in.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Close to where all that's going on, there's a scrape. But up there, and I'll tell you something we did in Illinois that really, I had a guy show me this years ago, and we started trying. Now, I've tried it in the South, waste of time. Horizontal rubs. Take a pine pole. You can take 2 fence posts or whatever and about 3 foot off the ground, make it horizontal, about 5 or 6 foot long. They'll rub them, they'll tear them up. If you use a green post, they just rub all the bark off of it, get the sap all over their horn, and they'll keep coming back till they break it. Works great in Illinois and Indiana.
I haven't heard of that one.
We've got on the hunting public, and I've already forgotten the guy's name. It's the older gentleman. They have on there like once a year, and he hunts his place, I believe, in Iowa.
Oh, yeah, I know you're talking about.
And he's got that horizontal rub that he kills every single year. Giants. Every single year on this horizontal rub, and that thing's like it's neck down from them rubbing on it, and it's a horizontal rub. It's like 2 posts. I think it's 2 posts that holds it up, and he just catches this trail as they kind of come. They branch off to him. They rub on that. He shoots them as they're rubbing it, and they take off. And I think it's been 3 years in a row. I think I've watched that same guy kill a buck 3 years in a row at that same post.
Here's the thing about Iowa: perfect scenario. I mean, it's their terrain is perfect. Their deer are perfect. I mean, and they work to that stuff. You know, I mean, they do. That's like when you find that spot, there's scrapes that I can show you can kill a deer on every year because they come back every year. And that's the same way in Iowa. It's just they've created that rub and those deer know it and it's bred in, and then they come back and back and back. But it's very private. You don't have anybody messing with it. I mean, you know, hey, that's a benefit of it. I'd like to have 2,000 acres in the Piney Woods here in North Louisiana that I was the only guy on, or 3,000, you know, because that's as good as, because in Iowa, I know some guys hunting some very small properties up there that are killing absolutely giant deer. Why? Because they ain't got no pressure, and they're the only ones hunting, and nobody's hunting around them, and they, you know, so they're getting, you know, you can shoot.
Yeah, and pressure, that dictates a lot of, I'm assuming deer I know deer activity in general, but I'm even assuming the way that deer set up and the way scrapes and hooking stuff, pressure dictates a lot of that as well.
Sure, I mean,
I would assume.
You can take any management area here in Louisiana. You can have all this great sign and everything, and all of a sudden, you know, opening day, people are all blowing through the woods, and
out the window.
The deer are going to change. Yeah, you just got to figure out where they're going. Yeah, because they're going to do that. They're going to have the sign wherever they're at. Yeah.
Well, I sent the Rookham Juice. My father-in-law, him and my mother-in-law, we're going up there for Thanksgiving, and so the whole family's going up there. But your boy's still, I'm still hunting, and so I was like, if I got to take my little 3-year-old boy out there in the stand, which I'd love to, but I was like, I told my wife, I said, if I got to take him out there and me just hunt the blinds instead of, you know, saddle hunting, at least I'm out there. And I was like, I'm taking this opportunity to go out there and hunt. But I sent him with that bottle of Rookham Juice, or a bottle of Rookham Juice. And I was like, I want you to go, if you don't mind, just go make some scrapes. And I even picked up 2 more of the Tacticams, and he got 4 total. He's got 2 from the farm. I was like, just pull them for now. And then 2 more 3.0 Pros, or the X 3.0 Pros, whatever. I was like, take those up there and put them on scrapes, and let's just see what kind of activity we get before I get up there, and just kind of see. And so I'm excited. They're heading up there now, so I'm ready for him to get that stuff out.
When is the primo rut in your part of Kansas?
Oh, I mean, it's already happened. I mean, it's prime. I say already happened. We're just about in it now. Yeah,
pretty much nationwide. Somewhere around this time of the year, it goes off everywhere. You know, it's somewhat. But I know up northern Missouri, it's probably on the backside of it pretty good right now. Yeah, because as you know, we're talking to people that's just whacking deer up there since they open gun season. They're just whacking them. I mean, it's just whacking, stacking northern Missouri right now.
Yeah, so typically like the week and a half, 2 weeks in up there around we are is where we start seeing the most activity. I think, and you're an hour and 15 minutes north. You and Corey are still seeing kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Which Corey saw.
We're Western Kansas. Yeah. You know, I put that in air quotes. I call it Central Kansas. Out there, they call it Western Kansas.
Yeah. They crazy. But was a creek to creek?
Yeah, crack. You're far enough west, it's a crack.
Yeah, we're in the crack.
Or ever how you say it.
We're in the crack territory. Arkansas, it's not Arkansas. Yeah. That's how far western Kansas we are. But what we're just talking about.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. So like a week and a half, I got hung up on the Arkansas, but a week and a half to 2 weeks in is where we start seeing most activity. I killed a deer 2 years ago right there. I was like November 10th, killed him then. But it was like 28 days after that first rut, really like the peak of the first rut, 28 days later is when the second's going to pick up. And that's what it was that deer killed last year, December 17th. So it's right there around that same time. And
the good thing too, when you come home for Christmas, then over here in the east part of Louisiana, it's going to be starting to crank up. Let me ask y'all a question. What's your favorite month of the year to scout whitetail deer? I have one. What's yours?
What's mine?
Yeah, favorite month of the year. If you could go out and find big buck sign any month of the year, what month would it be?
So if we're talking about actually locating sign and not bucks, I'd probably say end of July, August, somewhere right in there.
When's yours?
I like the end of October specifically. You're kind of transitioning from typical patterns to a little more rut. You're starting to see the scrapes. That's just my observation. I like end of October is more my preference. And then obviously once you get into November, you start seeing more of the rubs. Just me, start seeing more rubs and things like that. So I like that late October, early November. That's just my favorite. It's just more obvious to me.
And it is then. And I'm really talking about like putting cameras up too. Like if I'm trying to go and I'm trying to locate big deer, it seems like it's easier for me locating them.
Well, every day you're in the woods is the best day to scout, but my favorite month of the year is February.
Yeah. Why's that?
There's no pressure. There's no pressure on the deer herd. They're back to normality. the leaves hadn't started putting back out, and you know how easy it is to find scrapes and rubs in February.
Fresh leaves that's fallen, so they're scraped back. That makes sense.
There's nothing that's going to be in a scrape because all the leaves are down. You can see all the rubs very easily because there's nothing in the way. The deer are back on deer patterns that are normal. And you're going to find some core areas and some rut sign that you missed. So I'm telling everybody, seriously, I don't care if you hunt public land Louisiana, public land Illinois, public land Indiana, private land in Kansas, private land Louisiana. I don't care where or how you're hunting. My favorite time of the year to find big buck sign is February. And if you find it there in February, you can kill him there in October, November.
I've heard that a lot. And I tell myself every year, especially my public land spots, I'm like, I'm going to go in there in February and I'm going to go find them. And I never do. I never do.
I know a few guys that are crazy like me that do it. And the guys I know that do it, and some of the younger guys that I've shown to do it, have absolutely started killing some big bucks. Because if you ground pound in February, you really find what everybody else missed. Because right now, you go out there, even though the rut's on, there's still a lot of leaves in Louisiana on, especially in the pine forest where all the, French mulberry, American beautyberry, whatever you want to call it, they're just leaved out right now. You can't see nothing. But then all of a sudden, when all that's gone, and you can see everything, it's kind of like they will say, success leaves traces. Go find where their success was. And now you don't have to take a map and draw, take a compass and figure out where you're at. You just drop a pin.
Right.
Drop a pin. And then when you start dropping those pins in an area and you start seeing exactly what those deer do in that area per terrain that you're in, then you could just kind of move that around and say, okay, well, I bet over here and I bet over there. You know what I'm saying? It gives you opportunity to study the deer in that area even better. And and here's something else too. The food's going to change throughout the year, and all the deer are going to move. But where you find that best rut sign in February, because it's all over with, it's past everything. But where their best sign was, that's where you can kill them in October, November.
And the sign you're looking for then is going to be like tree rubs, like hookings and scrapes.
Scrapes, because the scrapes that really lasted the season are the scrapes that I'm looking for. The big rubs that lead me to those scrapes are the scrapes that I'm looking for.
Yeah. So let me ask you this really quick while I'm thinking about it. And that's some great points. And I know what we're doing. We're going up there pheasant hunting in January, and then we're turning right back around. And before tax season gets here, we're going back up scouting for deer.
But even in late January is a great time, especially that far when, away.
But one, rub lines. Sometimes you see, like rub lines. Sometimes you don't. What does a rub line mean?
That bucks walk that trail.
And what chooses him to go, and for sure, but what chooses him to go and rub 5, 10 trees in a row, whether they're close together or even spread out 15, 20 yards apiece? What causes him to hit those trees consecutively?
You're close to his core territory and he's marking his sign. He's just laying, I think it's a signpost for the other deer, the other bucks. That's what I believe. I mean, there's a lot of different biological studies on that, but I think he's just making signposts. And I've seen a big tree for Louisiana. It's about a 4-inch tree, and a buck just obliviated it. So I went and I found it like probably the day after he did it. And I went and put a camera on it. Well, 2 days later, there's a decent buck about three bushes over, and he's making him a rub. So, what's the rhyme? Because I know that little buck didn't make that giant rub. There's just no way. I mean, he'd had to be like a beaver. It took him a long time to do that much work.
So what were you talking about, Kyle, your buddy in South Louisiana?
I was just about to bring that up. So a buddy of mine, Kyle Gordon, he's hunted this property for generations now. Beautiful property, South Louisiana on the Mississippi River. Wonderful property. I've actually killed my biggest buck there as 166-inch, 11-point. Beautiful place.
With my rifle. Don't forget it.
My scope was messed up.
Sure.
Hey, at least you had a buddy, right?
Yeah, that's
He
right.
wanted that horseshoe.
I had a buddy that I was like, hey, tomorrow I need to borrow your gun. And I had another buddy that said, hey, tomorrow you need to be here. And we made it happen. But so we get down there, and he's over the years, he's taught me so much about deer hunting, probably more so than any study I've read or anything like that. So shout out, credit to him. But he's got certain trees that he knows if they're hit with a rub, they're certain size, right? He knows if they're hit, the dominant buck's in there, and it's a big one.
Sure.
And he gets excited. He gets pumped up about it. But then after like so big, I don't know the size, but if they get a little too big, most people would look like, oh, the bigger the tree, like that's
what I've always heard.
But he knows, he's seen it, and that's the only way he knows. He's seen it. It's a spike. That's just getting after that big tree.
Right.
But it's a certain size, somewhere around that probably 12-inch tree size or something like that, pretty good sized tree. If they're hitting that tree, he gets pumped and he's going after them, and he knows that the dominant buck's in there. And
that's swamp country. Am I right?
It's some river hills and stuff like that, but it's cane thickets and things like that. I mean, it's beautiful old growth river hilly kind of country.
When we're going?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
No, I mean, there's a lot of truth in that, because I mean, I've seen big bucks hit 1-inch saplings. Mm-hmm. But typically, and I think he's right, well, I know he's right, there's a certain size that because they're built, I think a lot of that rubbing on those bigger trees, they're actually, and I don't know, I may be wrong, but I think they're pretending to be in an aggressive situation, and they're building their neck muscles, getting ready to do some shoving and pushing with other bucks in case they have to. And I think that particular size tree gives them the most resistance.
That makes sense. I've never considered that.
Kind of like working with weights and stuff. And I for us, I think that's got a lot to do with it. Scientifically, I don't know, but I mean, if you just look at it through years and years and years and years of like he saw it and things like that. But one thing you just mentioned that I really want people to think about, and you just mentioned it. Your buddy says through all these years he's seen this, and this is what happens. He gets excited about, and you compared it to all the studies. Practical application beats studies 100% of the time.
I agree with you, and he's living proof of that.
Sure.
when he grew up as a kid, he's killed more bucks than I'll ever kill. I mean, really nice.
But for two reasons. Number one, he's got the right spot.
Correct, and he's out there putting boots on the ground.
Practical application. Mm-hmm. I was listening to a podcast a couple of days ago about these guys that kill all these 200-inch deer. Well, if you're not hunting where there's 200-inch deer, you're not going to kill 200-inch deer. And most of these guys has killed multiple 200-inch deer buying those deer. Now, I'm not buying them out of pen, but there's a big name out there that's killed the most of them, and he's got a high dollar bounty. Anybody finds him this giant 200-inch deer, he'll pay him a god-awful amount of money to put him on that deer.
It's more impressive to me if you're in, let's say, Piney Hill country, north central Louisiana, and you're killing some 135s every year. That's impressive to me.
Big body, 135.
Yeah, you're killing some 5.5-year-old big body.
Yeah, I want all the 200-inch deer hunters to come down here to the Coosatchee National Forest and show me your skills. And I'm not, if I had millions of dollars, I'd have bounties on deers too. Why not? Hey, anybody find me a 200-inch deer? Here's $50,000. I mean, I'll do it, but I don't have $50,000 throwing a 200-inch deer. I wish I did, because I go shoot some 200-inch deer. But and some people have killed. I mean, like that 17-year-old guy that shot that 190 walking to that wick that he did on a drag rag last year, but he's in Iowa on a private farm. And I mean, I'd love to shoot a deer with 60 inches of mass. Oh my God. I can't even imagine. I got pictures of it, but I mean, that's a phenomenal deer.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about satisfaction with deer hunting. I killed that 166-inch buck, and I love that deer. It's hanging on my wall, broadcasted or showcased in my living room. I love that deer. My favorite deer is probably my Kansas buck I killed. It's a 122.5-inch mainframe 7-point, but he was 7.5 years old
and as big as this table.
He bumped the scale. We don't know what he weighed because he pegged it out at like 270 was the scale, and he pegged it out, so we don't know what he weighed. But that's my most proud deer that I have and he's a 122-inch deer. You know, there's something to be said about satisfaction with score and weight and ages and all
and
that.
Unfortunately, I think the good and the bad of social media is it's got the score of a deer out of control or over exaggerated or whatever, because everybody's like, well, why did you shoot that? And we talked about that earlier in the show. But, you know, if a kid or an adult or anybody gets excited about a 100-inch deer, shoot it. I was shooting coals on a ranch in Texas one time, and I shot a deer that literally scored 100. I was excited about that. And you know, why would you be excited about a deer that scored exactly 100 inches? Well, number one, because it was 100 even, officially scored. And that's probably the only deer I've ever had officially scored. I don't get into all that. But it was a 5.5-year-old buck that had this little tiny rack. But he was a giant deer, and he was shoving all the other deer around. I'm like, check this out. You know, so we called him off that ranch because we were growing, you know, it wasn't fenced, but we had 10,000 acres, and we was trying to, you know, grow some really giant deer. And if you got a bully that's got a little bitty rack and he's shoving all the other deer around, well, you take him out. That's what I did. So I'll never forget shooting a 100-inch deer.
That's like going to a gas station, buying some candy bars and a Coke or something, and your tab is it like $6 even or $10 even. Yeah. I get excited about that.
They call that, it's like dull dude excited or something like that. It's like nothing that's really exciting, but you get really pumped about it.
The boys.
Yeah.
But, you know, I've shot all size deer, and I know people kill a lot bigger deer than I have, and that's okay. I mean, like my daddy always said, when your name's on them, you can't do nothing wrong. When your name ain't on them, you can't do nothing right. And there again, it's all about, you know, the most exciting deer hunt I've seen in the last couple of years was Jacob's deer at 173.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I mean, sure, it was my product. A deer trailed him to the stand, and the deer was too close to shoot. But to shoot that kind of deer in the piney woods, that's a monster.
That was a stud of a deer.
Did you hear the story about how he killed that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So everyone, if you didn't catch episode 19, you need to go check it out. But this man's here's first appearance. But this is Cuzz's Cooter Juice. What do you say if the name doesn't get him to smell well?
That's right, baby.
But so one of the owners of Spotted Dog.
No, he actually got it with a Seymour deer.
Oh, a Seymour deer.
Yeah, he actually shot it with Seymour deer.
So Seymour deer, I'm going to let you say in a second really quick, just a very brief description. And we got some videos coming out that's kind of explaining some stuff. It'll be on social media and your website and stuff. But this is Seymour deer. It's like deer dander, it's a calming scent. If you heard like Evercalm, that kind of stuff, hate to say a better product because I'm not trying to sound partial to yours, but it's a great product. But Jake, he went out, sprayed it maybe on his boots or something.
He asked me how to do it, and I told him spray it on the boots, and we get you stand, put about 3 or 4 pumps in the air. Yeah. That's what he did.
And 173-inch deer, and freaking nowhere there should be a deer over 100 inches flat. 173-inch deer came slipping in, trailed him right there to a stand.
Licked his ladder.
And if you know Jake, I know y'all don't know Jake, but come and buy a gun or suppressor at Spotted Dog, and you'll find out quick you're not going to find someone that is more integrity filled than that cat right there. So I put $1.50 on it. He ain't lying. He said someone came, licked his ladder. It was so close he couldn't shoot it. Didn't he had to wait for it to go out just a little distance to be able to shoot it? Now, not every story is going to be like that. I've used Seymour deer, and I've killed several bucks and a lot of does that I really think that probably should have busted me that didn't. And I think it's helped a lot. Or I know it's helped me personally a lot, but I've never had that happen to me. But that's a wild story.
Yeah, and I get those stories. People, you know, all the time. They post them, or they call me, they send it to me, and all this kind of stuff. And you know, and then the next guy called. Well, I sprayed out a half bottle. I didn't see nothing. Well, first of all, you shouldn't have sprayed out a half bottle, but too much is too much. And that's something else too about scent. Most people, for the biggest mistake people make with anybody's scent, mine or any other scent on the market, is they use too much. And less is best. And most people think if 5 sprays works, 50 sprays will work better. And that's not the case. It's just not the case with whitetail deer, because too much of anything is just too much. But, you know, and talking about the Seymour deer, it's designed to be a cover attractant. It's not magic in a bottle, but I can't tell you the times that we've had deer literally just follow us to the stand. The first time my wife, when we were developing this, and what's funny is a lot of the guys, if you read at the top, it's called the yellow dot formula. When I first started sending this out for people to test, I just put a yellow dot a round yellow dot on there, and everybody started calling it the yellow dot. But the first time my wife and I, and we were in Kansas, no, we was in Oklahoma on that particular hunt, and the guy I was hunting with had put us up a ground blind because my wife won't climb and all that stuff unless it's a really fine piece of equipment. She ain't getting in no, you know what I mean. Yeah. But anyway, so we're sitting there, and it's in a rut, and we're on an all-day hunt. And it's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We'd seen a few deer, nothing that we'd shoot, and I had 2 thermoses of coffee. One we'd done drank, and I opened up the second about 2 o'clock, and I just poured a cup, and I handed it to her, and I poured me a cup of coffee. And I look out the blind, and I said, "Baby, don't move." She goes, "What do you mean?" And I said, "There's a deer right there. Don't move." Well, anyway, this doe just literally walks up. I'd sprayed the blind with some early that morning, sprayed it out in front, and she's literally sitting there with her nose to this pop-up blind that we're sitting in. And, you know, we're just sitting there, and, I mean, I don't know why that deer didn't just, oh, look at there, there's hunters, you know. But anyway, so deer walks out there where I'd sprayed it out in front of the blind and walked on, and boy, we were, you know, she's like, "Oh my God, this stuff really does work." I said, "Yeah, baby, it really does work." You know, and she was just blown away that this deer literally walked up to us. And that was a good experience with, you know, having that hunt with my wife, because she likes hunting in Africa better than anything, but that was her first experience with it. And so many people, so many stories. Had a kid the other day send me a picture of an 8-point, his biggest deer ever, and it's 125-inch Louisiana deer. He had walked down his shooting lane, you know, to get to his box stand, and he sprayed his boots and walked all the way to his stand, and that's 8-point just walked up right to his freaking box stand, and he shoots it point blank with a 7 mag. You know what I mean? You know, when you're shooting them under 10 yards with a 7 mag, you're patient.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But he just couldn't believe that deer walked out and hit his shooting lane, and just turned and had his head down, was just walked right up to him.
Yeah.
And
talking about the amount you can overuse, a buddy of ours from Shreveport is I know who the guy I'm about to talk to. He's going to be listening, so I'm not knocking on you. It's just sharing a story with you.
I'll knock on him.
I'll knock on you, but Dakota, his brother, they're up in, I think they're in Ohio right now hunting, and they went and they found a scrape, and they were super excited about it. Like, they're like, "Oh man, like, we're scouting first day up here, found this big scrape. It's awesome. Like, it even smells like," and then they get to looking a little bit more, and it's a brand new little whole little bottle of Tink 69 that somebody done poured the whole bottle in there, and I guess just threw the bottle on the ground as trash. But it's don't use too much. That's how most people, and we've all done, is you go and you just like, "Man, I'm gonna pour a little bit on my boots, or a little bit on this trail, or like these little wicks. I'm gonna put a little bit on that." And then you get somewhere, you're like, "I'm going to dump a little bit right here." And then you get to where you're hunting, and you get downwind of you just a little bit, so you ain't smelling it the whole time. And you dump a little bit more, and you just use way too much of it. And those deer, they pick up on that.
Sure. They absolutely do. And the simpler you keep things, the better you're off. I mean, as a whole. And we know there's exceptions to every rule. You know, the guy can go, you know, sit out there and kill a booner with a lawn chair, or, you know, but those things never work for me, so I just have to take all the averages, moon phase, and we talked about this last time.
Yeah, we're about to get into the moon phases.
And then, well, we can go into it, because wasn't it funny how I talked about the almanac and the old time moon phase, and then once you left and started looking it up, how it coordinated with everything. And I know there's a study out of Mississippi that they claim the moon phase on all these collared deer don't have anything to do with deer movement. If that's what they believe on 2 or 3 collared deer, then base your hunting future on it. I don't.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing that we've talked about before is like the full moon. We talked about, you know, we've always, I'll just use me personally, I've always heard that the deer, they move on, like if you have a full moon, they're moving at night, not so much in the middle of the day. Like they're going to move, they're going to move a whole lot less in the day than they will at nighttime. I think that's true to some extent, but a lot of the studies that you do go and find, which I know you can't always go specifically on those, but deer, they're going to move. They're going to move no matter what. They may move more regular instead of those feeding those every 4 or 5 hours or whatever, or getting up. They may move a little bit more or a little bit less depending on what the moon is, but they're gonna move. And but what you're talking about specifically, I just had to say that for the full moon, but specifically after the last episode, and I texted you and Corey, I went and I started looking at like the quote unquote red moon, and I downloaded the app, and I've noticed the difference, just not so much hunting, but just trail cameras. I've noticed that when I pull it up and the moon is directly overhead, and it's more so the end than underfoot, but when the moon is directly overhead,
no matter what time of the day it is.
Well, so on me, I found that your midday, even early afternoon, just from what I found, I haven't noticed. I can't give you one example or out of all the trail cameras that I'm running in different places, and out of all the pictures I've looked for in the last month-ish or whatever, 3 weeks, whatever it is, I've not noticed any more movement midday to early afternoon. So essentially say from like 11 o'clock before lunch to 2 o'clock p.m. That little small window, I haven't noticed anything there, but really anytime before 11 and really after 2 is what I've narrowed it down. I'm seeing, if that moon's directly overhead, I'm seeing way more pictures. Now it may just be does, but instead of being 1 or 2 does at, if it's
so
overhead.
In other words, what you're saying is if the moon's straight up at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're seeing more deer.
I'm seeing way more deer at 8 o'clock. Like I'm not even so much so that daylight, you always see deer moving at daylight. So if it's at 8 o'clock in the morning, like up in Kansas, it hasn't been long. It ain't even been daylight an hour at 8 o'clock. So you should be having deer right before daylight and even through daylight moving and traveling. If it's in this one time, it was like 8:30 something or 8:20 something. I didn't hardly get any pictures before that, but right there within that, I don't remember what it was, maybe 15 or 20 minutes before and after the moon being directly overhead, I got tons of pictures. And again, on that case, I think that was all does, but I got tons of activity right then. So
I'm a believer that moon up, moon down is a phenomenal.
But that's the crazy thing though, is if you go and you look at the studies, any of your reputable people, they're not agreeing with that. But for me, what I've seen on my cameras, it adds up and it makes sense. For me,
I don't know why. I don't want to pay attention to the moon. It's something I don't have an opinion one way or another. I just don't want to look at it. And so like I would rather look at weather and pressure and
barometric pressure definitely has an effect on deer.
And I believe so too. But I don't mind looking at those. I hate looking at the moon, and I think it's something that I can't control the weather either, but it's something like that's completely out of my realm. And it just like, you look at the study with Mississippi State and they're saying the moon doesn't have an effect. And I'm like, good. Like that way I don't have to pay attention to it.
Well,
and it made me not even want to look at it that much more. There's probably something to it. I'm always open to there being some correlation between different environmental effects or whatever you have, but I don't want to pay attention to the moon. But there may be something there. It's just not my thing.
I'm over 200,000 pictures on my cell cameras now that I track all this stuff, and I can show you based on not deer collars, but on deer pictures and moon phase and the amount of deer movement on what we were talking about, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And, I was listening to something that wasn't even deer related the other day, and this guy was talking about sampling. If you got 10 pictures, if you flip a coin 10 times, you got a chance of being heads or tails. It's going to be more one way or the other. But once you get to 5,000 samples, then it's going to be about 50%. Well, I got over 200,000 samples in 5 years on these trail cameras. And it correlates moon up, moon down, moon up, moon down, moon up, moon down. 80+% of the time, that's when the majority of the movement is.
And it's moon up. Is that what you're saying?
Straight above, straight below.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
No matter what time of the day light that is. It could be straight up at daylight. It could be straight up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But the data I got based on these trail cameras, pictures don't lie.
Yeah.
And moon phases are all coordinated with that. And barometric. Now, you get a barometric change one way or the other, deer are going to move. And whether the moon's up or down. But, there's all of a sudden we get a cold front pushing through. All those things change it. But for the most part, I can't argue with something that we've been doing all of our lives with the almanac. And then all of a sudden now, I got 200,000 pictures and I got all the data to back it up.
Yeah. So what's your thoughts on this? So I know you're like, I don't even want to look into it. Like, not that you're against it, but what are your thoughts? Like, we go by pressure. Like when there's a dramatic increase in pressure, like when it's on the rise, it's hot. But also I've seen that when it's dropping dramatically, it's hot then too.
I'm under the impression it's either way. If there's a dramatic one way or another, I think it's a change and they respond to the change.
Absolutely. From my understanding and from what I've seen, but also once that pressure is on up there, once it's on up there, it stabilizes, and this high is 30s point, like in the upper third, like not 30s, but 30 point something in the higher parts of that, then I'm going to see more deer activity on cameras than what I would if it was, down just under below 30. But what are your thoughts on, if you're like, it may be something, it may not be, it's all based off gravitational pull, correct? Like the moon, same thing with the tide or whatever. Right. And so the moon, when it's directly overhead, has the strongest gravitational pull. But when it's underfoot, it's the minor, like that has the second most gravitational pull. Is that right?
That's right.
So if that's the case, what are your thoughts on barometric pressure? Like, you'll go by that, but not really crazy about looking into the moon. Like, your thoughts on like the rise in pressure, because it's easy to talk about rain or wind or sunny day or cloudy day or whatever. Like, it's easy to talk about that because that's something that we can see and feel. Temperature, that's something like, it's something physical that we can feel. The rain, that's something we can see. We can do all that, and deer can too. But like the pressure, I don't know about y'all, but I've never woken up one morning and be like, oh man, the pressure's it's on the rise today. Like, that's never happened.
If your arthritis starts acting up.
That's something else you can find in the almanac. But you know what I'm saying? Like, what's your thoughts on, if you can't feel pressure but deer can, and we go by that, what are your thoughts on, and why are you not saying you're not open, but you get what I'm trying to say. Not that you're knocking the moon.
I give more weight to pressure than I do moon phase. Why? Is that what you're asking? Why? I really don't know. I think it has to do with, like, my dad was super fixated on moon and major feeding times, and I think those correlate, if I'm not mistaken. Like,
absolutely, okay. And you discovered this recently also. When your major feed time is when the moon's straight up. Remember how you was telling me, and you get an hour ahead. For an example, if the moon is going to be straight up at 10 o'clock in the morning, your major feed is going to be from 9:03 to like 11:04, something like that. There's like a little over a 2 hour time frame that it's going to peak at 10, but it's going to be like 57, 47, both sides of that time. And that's based on the moon phase on every major feed app out there. Is based on the moon phase.
Yeah. And I think with him telling me that, and him just driving it into my mind, like, oh, you need to be at the stand this time, this blah, 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 I'd be looking, and I'd be so ready and so amped up, and I just wouldn't.
So you're just scarred is what it is.
That's what it is. That's what it boils down to. It's like, my dad told me this and it didn't work out, so I'm like, I'm not going to pay attention to that.
Here's my answer to the moon phase, the barometric pressure, the wind, and all of it. If you're not hunting, it don't matter.
Yeah.
But I will stick to my woodpecker's theory.
And what is that? I don't think I know that.
You haven't heard the woodpecker?
The woodpecker theory?
And I got a video. I got a video of a day of that 20-inch buck working that scrape. And in the background, you hear tick, 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 tick. I said, God, I wish I'd had that on that podcast the other night.
So the woodpecker,
it's my daddy's theory.
Well, and that's the video that we posted on TikTok that went just stupid viral. I mean, like hundreds of thousands of views and like thousands of, it's just crazy. But when you hear a woodpecker pecking, if you're not seeing big bucks, you're in the wrong area.
That's exactly, I believe that. I 100% believe that.
So what he means is, if that woodpecker's pecking, he's going and the pressure's up and something's causing him to go feed. And that's the same thing that's making the deer get on their feet and go feed.
But it's not flipped around, right? Like, if you're not seeing a woodpecker, that doesn't mean a big buck's there. Like, what if you're not in woodpecker habitat?
Well, tell me where in the United States, other than the grasslands, that don't have woodpeckers, and even out there they got woodpeckers pecking on the little bitty ones, because I've seen them out there pecking on the plum bushes.
I've never seen a woodpecker hit plum thickets, but even like up there where we are in Kansas,
I'm saying is the little trees out there.
Yeah. But I think you're in referring to just when the pressure has you can hear a woodpecker from a long ways away.
That's correct.
So if you hear a woodpecker pecking, something's causing him to feed, and it's easy for us and it's fun for us to think that, okay, well, me, like, we're going to eat at 12 o'clock just because that's time to go eat. Well, animals aren't. I'd like to think that they're not like that. That there's something that causes them to go want to feed at certain times, like hunger. Clearly, like that's the biggest thing. But still, there's going to be pressure or moon or whatever, even the time of day or weather, whatever it is going to cause them to feed. So if his theory is whatever's making the woodpecker peck, it's making the bucks, deer in general, be on their feet to feed. But I want to tell you, we were over in Mississippi a couple weekends ago hunting after this podcast, and me, Michael, and Richard, we're in a group text, and Ryan, Richard's son too, and we're all texting, and like, I mean, there's multiple pictures and videos. We're taking pictures or videoing woodpeckers, sending them to each other, and then somebody be like, nope, haven't seen a deer yet. Nope, haven't seen a deer yet. And then somebody else be like, yep, just saw 3 deer. So it was like we were having a game with it, you know.
But I mean, there again, like my daddy always said, if you're not seeing buck deer and you're hearing the woodpecker, you're in the wrong stand, because they're on their feet. And I believe it. I mean, I've lived my life. I'm 65, and I've lived my life by watching that. And even on these videos that I get on my trail cameras, and you see a buck working a scrape and you hear it, and that's what I listen for, that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, everybody wants to see the picture, but I'm looking to see what's going on, what the barometric pressure is. I want to know why.
Yeah. Why
is that deer at that spot at 9:03 in the morning? You know, why is that deer at that spot at 2:15 in the afternoon or 5:30 or whenever? I want to know why. Tell me all the parameters. And that's why I love cell cameras, because you can get all this data and create your own data. That's like we was talking last time. On my property, 100% of my buck movement, now I'm talking about 3-year-old and older deer, is on the east-northeast wind. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't have an east wind, some form of east wind blowing, I don't have a buck moving. Now, I know that's absurd, you know, and everybody says east is least. Well, on my property, but 15 miles up the road, I got another place to hunt. And if there's not a northwest wind blowing, you don't see a buck.
Is it because of like their bedding area?
It's terrain and all that. But what that teaches you is and also the way the topograph, you know, but what I know is, why would I hunt on any other wind unless it's a full blown rut? Why would I go hunt and participate in those woods? So that's what I'm telling you. You can start creating that data with trail cameras on your place in Kansas, and you can know with predictable studies. I mean, I did this information, and I did a prediction a few years ago, and the trail camera actually caught the arrow coming out of the backside of the deer when it predicted I needed to be there hunting. That's a pretty cool picture. I'll show you that. You can see the blood flying out of the backside of that deer when he spun in front of that camera. That's really cool. I wish I'd had it on video instead of on freaking still, but anyway. But
so it almost looked like a secondary shot or like a backside.
Oh, you just see blood flying out the back of this deer.
That's pretty cool.
I put it on social media and put it running on empty. And oh my God, it went stupid. Because he's literally running on empty.
Yeah.
And but there's so much that you could that's tools that are available to us that's out there. Now, I mean, the old woodpecker trick, you can't. I mean, but when you start studying that stuff, and I never tell people not to go hunting if it's not, you know, like on a full moon. I'm probably gonna get in my stand realistically probably around 8:30 in the morning, and I'm gonna come down around 3 o'clock, 3:30 that afternoon. I'm gonna hunt that period of time because I know for a fact. And some of the big states that I used to guide in, that we killed Boone and Crockett deer. One of the biggest bucks that I personally guided was shot at 12:37 p.m. on a full moon. 37 minutes after straight up moon, we shot a Boone and Crockett who walked out to a scrape I'd made. And you talk about a setup. There was nowhere to get. You're talking about a pin. I couldn't figure out how to set up to kill this deer. And then I got to thinking one day. I said, deer aren't scared of hay bales. So I went and bought a truckload of hay, the little square bales, and I built a blind where me and this guy could get in it. And 3 days ahead of us killing that deer, I built a hay bale blind with a shooting window. And the deer walked out there like, okay, it's time for him to come out. You know, turn the switch. Here he comes, and guy shoots him.
Do you think bucks respond differently to moon, pressure, weather, things like that than some less mature, some more immature bucks and even does?
I think the more mature a buck becomes, the less he responds to anything other than himself.
You think that's just because there's a lot less movement in general?
Well, it's like you talked about earlier. Remember you said everybody always thought these big bucks would travel all these mileage, but yet they really have a core? He didn't get that big and that old by being stupid.
Yeah.
And he's got something has kept him alive and out of a gun barrel or out of a bow range his entire life. And I think they develop a sixth sense or whatever that keeps them from being killed. But even though they get killed every year, more and more of them, because there's more and more people out there with all this technology. But I don't know. I just think they got a sixth sense like we do. And some people, I think some of them's got a golden horseshoe, and just like you do.
I don't know about that.
I know there's one on Turnbull Island back in the 80s had a golden horseshoe, because I shot at a deer back in the 80s with a bow that probably the biggest whitetail I've ever seen in the state of Louisiana. I know it's the biggest whitetail I've ever seen in most states. But he was coming in on a string. I was shooting a recurve. It's, it's getting dark, and I let the arrow fly. And I didn't see the vine. I just didn't see the vine, and I put that arrow right between that vine and just split that vine, and my arrow, and that buck ran about 20 yards, stopped, and looked out behind a tree and sat there till it got dark, and then I heard him run off after dark. And I'm talking about deer of a lifetime.
Haunting you 40 years later.
Yeah.
Man.
Not haunting me. It's just, it's just like 1 inch one way or the other. And, and I didn't see, because it's so late in the evening, I just didn't see the vine, and I shot, and I just put it right through the vine, and right before it got to the deer, and then I got to watch the deer stick his head out behind a tree. He's looking to see what's going on, and no other shot opportunity. And he was quite large.
Yeah, man,
quite large.
Hate that.
Yeah, that's tough.
But hey, who knows? You just never know, and crap happens, and it starts with an S.
Yeah.
But have you ever missed a deer?
Have I missed a deer?
Yeah.
Bruh, do you know who you're talking to? Yes. Yeah, I've missed and put bad shots on. I'm not saying more deer than I can count, but one is too many. But yeah,
but it happens.
I've done my fair share of wounding deer and not been able to find them, or just completely missed them. I don't know. It kind of goes back to the thing that once I started getting, I've said this on this podcast before, but it's kind of like what me and you talked about. You're about to get a new bow, and talking about it's almost like a little bit of a reset. And I kind of went through. That's me putting words into your mouth, but I kind of went through a reset. And again, I've talked about it on here, but I went through a little bit of a reset where I was like, all right, I'm tired of. I don't care if it's a 70-pound doe. I'm tired of seeing a deer, lose my breath just because I'm so excited. And buck fever, doe fever, having it all, and just getting so overwhelmed that it's hard for me to draw my bow back. And once I get it drawn back, it's like I've got to release that arrow as fast as I possibly can. It's like it's going to blow up on me or kill me if or a snake's going to bite me if I hold it any longer, something like that. It's like I draw back, my pin's right there pretty close, and shoot, and then you think and you completely miss a deer, or you hit it in the freaking tail, and you're like, what? That was 15 yards. What in the world was I doing? That I've had my fair share of those. But once I started kind of going and learning the fundamentals of archery, not that I have them down, but once I started kind of learning that's something that helped me. But yes, to answer your question, I've scarred.
And the reason I
deer.
brought that up is because if we live in a raw and real world, which I live in, people have got to understand that happens to us all. Mm-hmm. It does. And you just got to live through it. Even though you think about it 40 years later, and I'll never get that picture out of my mind. But at the same time, the next 100-inch or whatever comes out, it's still, it's still part of the hunt, and you got to be real respectful of the animal. And, just, understand that that's just part of life, and you're going to have failure. And if you don't have failures, you'll never have successes. And I mean, that's just part of it. It really is. I mean, I wish we could all have a magic wand and get everybody shot booners and but that's just not reality.
Would it be as fun?
No, it would not be. It absolutely. It's kind of what we talked about a while ago. Corey, he's up in Kansas, and he's going on like 2 or 3 weeks.
I think Sunday will be 3 weeks.
I mean, like, Corey, you're listening to this. You've been up there. Like, I forgot what he looks like. Like, it's been so long. But he's got a really, really big deer. He had him yesterday at 66 yards, and he didn't try him. And he's like, but he has seen this deer, and this is 170 plus, like easy 170s Kansas. Just, I mean, 6+ year old deer, just a beautiful. I mean,
he's what we're all looking for.
Yeah, 100%, absolutely. And he's been hunting. He's passed other deer. He's hunted only really good wins for this deer. And he's seen him multiple times. I mean, he's probably seen this deer, 10 times in the last almost 3 weeks?
Probably so. Something like that.
He's getting close, but he's building that story. It's when he kills him, and he told me right before the podcast, I don't know if you heard him, but I had him on speakerphone while I was setting this stuff up. He's like, bro, I'm killing him. I'm killing him today or tomorrow. Like, things are lining up. Like, I had him yesterday. I'm just getting closer and closer. Like, I'm moving around. I'm repositioning. Like, I'm getting close. And I had him at 66 yards yesterday. And he's like, I'm dialing him on the end. And so when he kills him,
that gave me chills just thinking about it, because it's that exciting. It really is.
When he kills him, it's going to be worth so much. That'll be his favorite deer and most memorable story ever for sure.
No doubt.
Because he earned that deer. I mean, I don't know if y'all have, but I've dropped in the woods before, public land, and drop in the first afternoon, punch a big deer. And yeah, that's exciting because but to go earn that deer and encounter that deer, that, like you said, that'll be a deer he'll never forget.
No, and hunting them hard does one thing too, but us going up there and doing the work, like throughout the spring, like you start in February and you start going and looking for the sign, and you go, like us going to Kansas once a month, once every 6 weeks or whatever, doing work, whether it's feed or water. Like, we're big on water up there. Cameras running different things and moving forward, scrapes and stuff. But you go and you put the work in the off season, that makes it worth a lot too. So you don't have to hunt a deer for a month straight for it to be. That's not what we're saying. Is you don't have to hunt a deer for a month straight for it to pay off for even years.
That's not hunting. That's addiction.
Yeah.
Because it is. I mean, you get so addicted. I gotta. And I respect that 100%. I mean, I wish I had 170 each deer I could go spend a month with. Yeah. I really do. And because I'd probably. If I had a 170-inch deer right now on camera, I'd be spending that. I'd be with that deer.
Yeah,
and why not? Because it's a hunt of a lifetime. I mean, what's the percentages of over 170-inch deer shot? That's not a very big number.
Yeah, very small.
No. And the majority of hunters are not going to ever encounter a 170-inch deer.
The majority of hunters never kill a 150-inch deer, and that's okay, because it dictates back to money. Where you at, how much land you got to hunt, da-da-da-da-da. There's a lot of variables. Yeah. You could be a fantastic hunter and not hunt where there's big deer and never kill what most people call a big deer. But yet, if you had that opportunity to go hunt where those big deer are, you'd smoke everybody else.
Absolutely. So, what you mentioned earlier, talking about cameras, I think this is kind of where you're going to. You asked him how much stock does he put into cameras. Again, I think where you're going is kind of what me and you've already talked about, is like you on some of your pieces, you have pieces that you're getting some really good activity on, but you're not getting pictures of them. Me, at my place, this is the worst it's ever been. Like, me and my father-in-law, we're getting we're getting no mature bucks on camera. The only deer we're getting on camera are tons of does, little small bucks, real small bucks, and millions of turkeys is kind of what it feels like. But I know that the deer are moving. You weren't getting pictures of any deer, but you were seeing deer activity. But Corey specifically, out of all that big place, 482 acres he has up there, that deer that he's talking about he's been hunting, that big deer, he's gotten very few pictures of that deer, but he's seen him every day running does or being locked down with does. And so he's seeing a ton of activity, just not getting them on camera.
I mean, and that brings up a real good point too. Just because you got cameras out there don't mean all those deer are going to walk in front of them.
No.
Because there's a lot more room around the camera than it is right in front of the camera.
And that is what I was leading towards. I'm glad you brought that back up.
Yeah. And here's something else too. Yeah, I believe in what the data tells me. And I believe in the moon phase, and I believe in barometric pressure, and I believe all these things are simply tools in a toolbox. And the more the tools that you use out of that toolbox, I think the greater chance of being successful you are. Now, you might only pull out one tool today and go shoot a monster buck, but you still have the toolbox. And if you'll start studying the moon, and I'm not saying you have to, it's, nothing in life is an absolute, and nothing in deer hunting is an absolute, because there's always, like you said earlier when we was talking, there's always that outer edge or this or that or something else happens. How many people have killed a big buck because somebody else was walking through the woods,
pushed it over on him,
and it got that deer up out of his norm, and he might have just been slipping, and he might have walked by you as calm as a cucumber, but he left an area to find something else. We don't know that. Those are statistics that we'll never know the answers to. And there's so much of that, especially on public land or even on private land. You don't never know what got that deer up.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's common denominators of toolboxes and tools in our boxes that if we put enough of those common denominators in play, it will give us the best batting average that we can have.
You're doing everything you can statistically to give yourself the best odds of getting on that buck.
That's right.
That's what you're doing.
That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
And the more of those things that you come into play, the better your odds, the better your odds. I'd rather have one-on-one chance of killing, either I will or I won't, than I had maybe. You know what I'm saying? It's just put everything in your box to work for you, and then hope the deer comes.
Yeah. Well, and my biggest thing is I feel like I know how to deer hunt until I start having conversations like this, or I talk to people that really know how to deer hunt. Like you talk to somebody that really knows what they're doing. And then I'm like, man, if it wasn't for a feeder sitting, trying to shoot slickheads or something, like what do I actually know? Like that's what it feels like sometimes. And I know that's not entirely the case, but still, as much technology as we have, like when it comes to just cell cameras in general, and even some of the scents and some of the different tactics that we have, like we ought to be kicking ourselves in the butt for not going and utilizing them more. Like, and not just putting trail cameras on feed, like whether it's food plots or feeders or whatever, or like up in Kansas, we have water holes. Not saying that doesn't work, and I've gotten pictures for years like that, but what am I missing outside of that? Like here at the house, it's easy just to go and find a deer trail out in a thicket or something like that and put a camera up on it on public ground. Like you're going to get some deer activity moving through there. Up there, it's a little bit different, but I don't know, I'd be kicking myself for not doing it earlier, like really trying to hunt scrapes.
And the more we know, and the more you can move around. And I constantly move cameras.
Is that a lot of pressure that you're putting out there, or is the see more deer actually kind of covering you up?
Dude, I spray a lot of that.
Yeah, I've always been so nervous to go out there and either scout or move cameras or whatever. I'm trying to get in, get out, not try to put too much pressure on my deer when I'm out there, especially in key moments where I'm really think I'm getting close, but all of a sudden I'm not seeing deer. I think maybe they're over in this area instead. Maybe I'm going to check that out. I don't want to bust up through these areas during hunting season, scared I'm going to push deer out. And that's
why you need to start in
big
February.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is what it is, but I move a lot. Like if I hadn't got out and scouted, I knew I had a scrape here and I knew I had a scrape over here and I knew I had a lot of deer activity. But then all of a sudden on this trail over here on this ridge, bam, all of a sudden they come in there and made scrapes. Now, if I'm just sitting back watching that camera, I wouldn't have known that. And on this ridge over here, all of a sudden, boom, I got scrape. So then I immediately, once I went there and looked at that, I immediately moved 4 more cameras in there, 2 on each ridge. So now I've got 3 cameras looking at each area. And now I'm getting a lot more pictures.
And the reason I asked that, a practical example is, I really thought I had these deer figured out in Kansas at the spot I hunt. And like it was the 2 or 3 years I hunted up there, it was clockwork. The first full week of November, be up there, and there's going to be a mature buck that's going to slip up, and I have to be ready. It's a big travel corridor, A lot of bucks working this area, traveling through, checking does, bumping them in and out, and I see tons of bucks. I rattle them in, grunt them in. It's awesome. It's worth the price of admission going up there and doing that. This year it was different. You know, I had some bucks, you know, kind of early season in and out, you know, a little predictable. And then by the time I was able to get up there, the first full week of November, I get up there and I was highly disappointed in the amount of rubs I saw and the amount of scrapes I saw. It was almost nothing compared to what I'm used to seeing.
Was the weather different? Was it drier? Was it wetter? I mean, you got to look at more than just what happened.
Yeah.
Right there. You got to look at the bigger picture.
Slightly warmer.
Yeah.
Slightly. You know, we're talking maybe 10 degrees. Slightly warmer. That was the difference. I actually hunted 6 full days this time when normally I'm there 4 full days. And I still didn't see it. Like, you know, normally there's rubs and scrapes and there's activity leading up to that.
Has there been new crops put in within a mile of you? I mean, you got to.
Yeah, I know there's so many factors out there that could contribute to that. It was just, it was discouraging getting up there and getting all that excitement built up. And I get there and I'm like, this is not what I'm used to. Something's different.
Buddy of mine, they're up in Nebraska right now, and I talked to him yesterday, and they're like, same scenario you're talking about. I said, well, get out, drive around, see what's new in the country, you know, see what's going on. Well, come to find out, about a half a mile from where they've been hunting all these years, somebody just put in a big alfalfa field. What a deer like.
Yeah.
And, you know, so they figured now they drove by there other evening or since then, and like 50 deer out in that alfalfa field about 4 o'clock one afternoon. Well, you know, that might have something to do with it. I don't know. And there again, every situation is different. You just don't know. But you got to look at the area to see what might be going on. Like somebody could have put in an alfalfa field or cornfield you're not aware of.
Mm-hmm. And you had Milo right there. The place you're talking about, you had Milo right to your back, didn't you?
Half Milo, half wheat.
Okay.
Yeah, right outside of there.
Deer will eat Milo.
Oh, I mean,
the deer will eat Milo.
Good bit of traffic through there. You know, just traffic. I didn't see the you know, even in the woodlines, I didn't see the scrapes and rubs that I'm used to seeing. Typically, that's wheat, but it was half wheat, half Milo this year, and then a cattle pasture on the other side. But it wasn't nothing like it used to be or had been.
Well, you shouldn't have shot it out.
That's his problem. He's killed too many dang good deer up there.
No, that's definitely not the case.
He got spoiled, and now he's had to go to work, huh?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. Really, I was spoiled.
But here again, early in the conversation, you said you had a big buck on camera at your stand.
I did, and he was regular. September, October, towards the end of October, I kind of lost him, and then about probably 2 weeks before I got up there, maybe a picture, and then I didn't see him again until that one picture of that one day. He happened to come through, and it was like, you know, just a quick pass through, and that was it. So. Very unpredictable at this rate, and just not quite what I'm used to seeing.
Something's different. You just got to figure out.
Something's definitely different.
Global warming, probably.
Yeah, it has to be global.
It's all the electric cars, global warming.
Yeah,
it's all that kind of stuff. Well, boys, I'm about ready to go get some lunch.
Yes, sir.
Be good.
Real quick, we just had the Matthews drops, and Hoyt and Matthews, they just dropped, and dude,
I've got to get down there and shoot them.
You do.
I hear a lot of good things about both of them.
There's some really, really good things.
Yeah, I watched you drop. It was good, even though they were talking in the background. Don't you love live? Go put that back on the shelf.
Yeah. That's it was. That
was funny.
It was. It's but yeah, thank all of you for listening, staying up to date with us, checking it out. It really does. It means a lot, and I'm glad for you. I'm thankful that you came back up.
And I want to close out with this. Use it the right way, use it at the right time, and don't use too much. Because scent works, you just got to work it, you know, and you really do. And I appreciate people that, you know, support my company and my products. And I'm not going to say they're the best. I'm never going to tell everybody because I want to continue to be better. But I want to close by saying this. I got the privilege to work with the head biologist for Texas on a ranch I had one time for 5 years. And he's now retired, but this guy was the head of the whole Whitetail Institute thing with Texas, and probably the smartest whitetail guy I've ever met. And we was riding around in my truck one day, and he looked over at me and he said, you know what, as smart as I am, he said, I got a PhD, and I've got 1,000 hours of field study, and I got all this. He said, let me tell you what I know about whitetail deer. He said, I don't know much. He said, because every year that we do studies, we find out stuff that we just didn't know. And he said, when people think they got a whitetail deer figured out, he says they're clueless. He said, because I'm probably the most educated guy out here today, and this was, a few years ago, in the whitetail industry. And he said, I don't know very little about a whitetail deer. That impressed me. A guy that stature would say that with all his background, that there's so much more that we could learn that we just don't know.
Yeah, and a lot of times that information, it feels like it contradicts itself. Like you learn something or you've lived forever by something, and then you do a study or you read a study and you come across another bit of information. It feels like it contradicts what you know or something that you've even seen, but that just goes to show you that those deer, two things. It goes to show you that the only thing that doesn't contradict itself is the Bible. And number two, it goes to show you that those are wild animals and you can go and you can pin them down some, but they're still animals. They're going to do what they want to do.
And think about this, as much technology as we got against the deer, we're teaching the deer. I think deer are, I think they pick up on things, and definitely when you get a mass invasion of hunters into the woods, their pattern changes.
Yeah.
So, and now we got mass invasions of cameras and everything else in the woods. I think, deer are very adaptable.
Oh, they have to be.
And,
for sure. Yeah, there's a guy in Michigan, Wired to Hunt, Mark Kenyon.
Mark Kenyon.
But he this was a couple of years ago. He was a big ozonics guy, loved ozonics. And he may still run them, but he noticed there was an association when that ozonics, it still has a smell of sorts. Sure. And he noticed when deer would walk downwind of his ozonics, they would pick up on it, and then they, after several years, associated that with danger.
Absolutely.
And they were kind of scared of it, so he had to get away from it for a little bit. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not trying to put words on
it. And I can see that. I mean, the ozone machine works. There's no doubt about it. But success leaves traces, and failure leaves traces.
It's good.
So there again, that proves that old adage 100%. Anything gets used to something and associates it to danger, especially a whitetail deer. It don't take a whitetail deer long to figure out something ain't right.
Right.
Yeah. Even if they don't know what it is. All right, dude. Thank you for driving up from South Louisiana. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Cuzz. It was fun.
Yeah.
All right. Do it again.
Man, we will. We absolutely will. So we hit on the moon. We hit on scrapes. I learned a lot. The scrapes. I said it at the last podcast. I've said it 100 times in between then and now, but I'm excited to hurry up and get to Kansas at the end of this week and stay up there for a little while and follow some scrapes.
Well, I challenge you guys to do this. Start running scrapes seriously year round, even if it's only just a few. And when you start doing that, you're going to educate yourself on how deer react. And the more reaction you get, the more education your deer in that area is going to relate to you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on too.
No, this is fun. I always love doing this.
For sure. We have another one that I don't know if we'll get before I go to Kansas, but I definitely want to get you on talking about duck hunters. So he's a wildlife biologist, studies ducks, waterfowl, and everything, and he claims to be smart. Well, that's still out for debate, but it's easy for us in North Louisiana to say, man, we're not in the flyway anymore, and duck hunting sucks. And kind of same way that it is with deer, there's so much more to it. I know it's the same with ducks just by hearing you some. So I'm looking forward to getting you back on, and let's talk about kind of where the duck numbers are now, because there's some things that we see that you've even talked about on some earlier podcasts, like episode 1, I think.
Yeah.
Talking about why we see more ducks in certain parts of the year than others and why we don't, everything. So I'm looking forward to getting you back on.
That's going to be fun. Yeah. Just talk about habitat conditions. That's what I work with. That's what I do. Programs to help out on a landscape basis. So maybe we can correlate that with some duck hunting, duck numbers, and just some general duck conversation. And we're getting, duck season's here now. Yeah. So it's a good time to talk about it.
Yeah. You got on them pretty good the other day too, didn't you?
Yeah, it was all right.
Yeah. So he ain't sharing any more information about that. So, all right. Shop all your Cuzz's products, Old Indian Tricks products at SpottedDogSportingGoods.com. You got cooter juice. You have using deer in the rut. You have Rookham juice. Clearly, we're using that year round. And Seymour deer. I know us three. He's going to, but me and Michael, we don't go into the woods without taking it and spraying it. So anyhow, go check it out. SpottedDogSportingGoods.com. We really appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time.
time.
See you later.
All right. Bye, y'all.